So yes, I am in the middle of a crazy day, and I apologize for this podcast starting so late today. But there's a lot going on, and then there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's getting into trade rumor time, so that's kind of fun.
But the blizzard that wasn't
Yes.
is not one of the things that delayed you, right, Ak?
No, the blizzard that wasn't was pretty horrible, and very incredibly disappointing for the children. That was just one of those things. Like, there's nothing worse for the kids than being told, basically, oh, tomorrow's going to be off, for sure. And now,
Sorry. I think I have the browser open this time. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. Usually I'm not that person.
Totally fine. No, it is not usually you. Kevin was very good about doing 2 o'clock, and now he was ready to change when we changed it to 2, and I don't know if I lost him when we changed it to 3. I'm trying to figure that out. So anyway, we'll find out. I may have. I apologize for that if I do. I'm going to the Flyers game after this, so there's that too. The Arizona Coyotes are in town.
They're a really exciting team to watch.
I know.
No, I just one last thing on the blizzard that wasn't. It was funny because I was switching between CNN and Fox and a different number of different national cable shows last night. It was all like weather girls and everything showing like the swirling storm coming in. And I wake up this morning and I think New York got hit by 4 inches and nothing. It was just nothing, just a typical.
Yeah, and it started to feel that way as the day went on yesterday a little bit. You got the sense that this could be a big bust. I think I might have even said that yesterday on the podcast. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, off the topic, we have to give you an acknowledgement because the news today. I heard it somewhere a few weeks ago that somebody said that a certain future Hall of Fame goaltender would retire and was choosing between the Blues and the Devils for a management position.
Yes, that's
Who was
correct.
that? Who said that?
I appreciate that. That's very nice of you, Mike, and not at all prompted. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And your check's in the mail, but thank you. Yes, Marty Brodeur did indeed take that assistant GM job. Proving once again that goaltenders can jump right from the rink into a general manager position.
And from what came out after the announcement, it sounds like that the position is with St. Louis. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Kev.
Hey there. Sorry about that.
Thank you for being so flexible today.
Yeah. Have we started?
We're live, but just so you know, we haven't started. We are live.
But the position with St. Louis sounds like it's a 1-year thing for the length of the contract, and then he may be free and open to rejoining the Devils. So it doesn't sound like, this is a long-term thing in St. Louis, but, that's...
Yeah, well, like I talked about last week, it was the whole thing was the Devils, it was basically all but written in blood that he was going to eventually work for the Devils. So this, he had to go talk to the Devils about this before he took this job. But I think it's let's get into it. Let's start the show and we'll get right into it.
Yep, let's do that because I'm still kind of working on that.
Okay, cool. All right, here we go. Let me look at the date real quick. Okay, so yeah, it's the 27th of January. Okay, it's Tuesday. Okay. Hey, Hockey World, how you doing? It's Tuesday, January 27th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. Coming to you from the place that didn't get a blizzard, that was supposed to get a blizzard. We got literally, it was snowmageddon around here. I'm just convinced just a big ploy by the retail establishments around here who are in cahoots with, so the Weather Channel's in cahoots with the supermarkets, so everyone goes and buys up everything imaginable, and especially at liquor stores. I mean, they were really mobbed yesterday, which just makes you know how good people feel about their lives around here when they think they're going to be trapped in their home for a couple of days and have to get nothing but bottles and bottles of alcohol to sustain themselves. But Yeah, it never happened. And the kids woke up to just a dusting outside, and everybody was depressed, and the kids were literally in tears just driving away because they had already had their days planned today. So yeah, and it reminds you of that feeling of like, oh man, when a snow day doesn't happen. There's nothing worse than a snow day not happening. So, but then of course they let them out a little bit early, so that threw me off, and then I ended up having to reschedule the podcast. So anyway, there you have it. We got a little bit of snow later in the day, for what it's worth. So, Kevin, how was Columbus?
It was great. I love the annual convention, as I call it.
Yeah.
Columbus is a great city. It's a small, big city, meaning it's really easy to get around, and everything was in close proximity. And the Columbus folks laid out the red carpet, literally, and they had a giant like toboggan run like thing that they had right next to the arena, and there was a lot of parties and a lot of celebration, and I think it's an indication of why I think the NHL appreciates that they have a city like Columbus that's only it's the only pro game in town, unless you count the Ohio State, which is pro in its presentation and amateur in its kind of
it's actuality. But yeah, it's about as pro as you can get in terms of my gosh, and then having them having just won the championship, that had to still be fresh in the air. Obviously.
Yeah. Give Ryan Johansson some credit there for pulling out the Ohio State jersey and all that kind of stuff. The game is what it is. I'm always it's not my cup of tea, that style of hockey, but I think it's really like, how can you complain about it? It's a multi-million-dollar event, and the tickets are all sold out, and the people who do show up get to see players' personalities better than they ever do. I appreciate the watchdog function of journalism. It's funny, like, journalism used to primarily be about information. That's why people needed journalism, because the only way to find out things was to read the paper. Well, that function now has been pushed down a little bit.
Right.
And the watchdog function, which is, and then there's the entertainment function of journalism, and that's been pushed up through the years. And then there's the watchdog function. But I think the watchdog function has become confused. Like, I see journalists who, feel like they ought to comment about that this is a farce to play this game like this, and to me,
I wonder what he's talking about.
So, to me, it's okay. Actually, did you comment on this yesterday, or
Mike did?
Oh, I did.
Mike's along the farce aspect, but we were talking about.
I guess my point is like, I can respect criticism of, say, the officiating in the NHL, or that you got to hold the league accountable for a lot of things, but all-star games are not one of them. Because it works for what they're trying to accomplish, and it's if you don't want to watch it, then don't watch it. But for the people there, it seems to work. So
yeah, for the people there, I agree with you. It's such a great event, and the whole thing of it is, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Just to me, the game was a little bit more. I don't know. From afar, it was a more disappointing type game than normal, and we wondered about why the game has become even maybe a little bit less aggressive. And I think part of it has to do perhaps with the fact that players from opposite teams, from the same team, are on opposite teams. So you're going to have. I think that does play into it a little bit. I don't know.
Well, it really hasn't been aggressive since Lemieux played. The scores have gone up. I just don't even know what to say about the competition. I just don't see it as a competition. It's almost to me like 2 days of skill contests.
Yeah.
But I read there that the league basically took out 8,000 rooms, and I think the economic impact for Columbus was $8 million. So
Yeah, you can't complain about. I mean, that's
how can you complain about that?
yeah.
I mean,
And the draft was. I mean, there were
everything was sold
great
out.
moments.
It was a fun time.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of happy people there. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is. There were some great moments. I mean, I thought the draft was incredibly entertaining, and really does give you an insight into some of the players. Like, I mean, how many people knew, Foligno, before his personality before this weekend? I mean, now we all know him, and now when you see him play, you think, oh, that's what he's like. But no one knew anything about him, or even guys like Drew Doughty and Getzlaff are sort of, we didn't necessarily see their personalities that often come through, and I like that part of it. I thought, the Ovechkin thing was comical, and
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I like that, and I think that the fact that they made the Sagan for Kessel trade was brilliant. That was hilarious, and they really handled that well.
And like I said yesterday, and I'll be brief on this because we're going to move on to other things. Is like I said, I thought the weekend it started off at a high point and it went down as it went along. I thought the draft was very interesting and funny, and potentially could have had some problems if a few players had had a few more beverages, but it did nothing embarrassing happened. I thought the skills competition was like it always is. There's some impressive things. Shea Weber hitting 108 miles an hour on a slap shot is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And the game is, if you expect competition out of the game, or if you expect, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where, like we were talking about it yesterday, I thought they operated in half speed. I would almost be open to the possibility of them having 2 days worth of skills competitions rather than a game where people are just going through the motions. But I understand I'm not the target audience. That people who are hockey fanatics and addicts are not the audience. It's for kids. It's for the local venue, and if that's the way they want to keep it going, that's fine. I went to go see American Sniper.
I don't know. I think. Do you think, Kevin, it would be possible to combine the skills competition in the game? I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're moving in that direction. Like, if you notice, the writers didn't pick the MVP.
Right.
It was an interactive deal.
Right.
So I mean, I think they're sort of moving in that general direction. But as I said, like
a 2-period game or a 2-half game or something like that, after a skills competition, the skills competition feels a little short to me. Every time it feels like it's stretched out because they stretch it out. But
they do stretch it out. It was obviously longer this year than in the past.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. I think that's what they've done. With this whole the shootout breakaway type goals where they do that. They've stretched that out a little bit now as well.
I love that event. I love the event where they where they're passing the puck into the small nets on the other side and they're going back and forth. I think that event really moves well and is cool. That relay, that's a fun event, I think.
Yeah, I mean the skills contest for a traditionalist is more fun than the game, obviously. So
yeah, I mean they're trying as hard as they can. So
yeah, and I like the hardest shot. I still do.
Yeah, me too. That definitely has become a thing now in the NHL. That's become like the highlight of the whole thing.
As Tom Cruise would say, we feel the need for speed. So
yeah, they did the whole breakaway, the creative breakaway thing, which I think they still need to pick. These guys still need to get more creative within it, and there's so many more spaces for it to go. But some guys are trying.
I thought they did a pretty good job. I mean, they tried to light a stick on fire. They didn't allow them to do it, but. You can't get more creative than that.
Well, that's true. There was definitely some good stuff, and the Johnny Gaudreau, the Voracek grabbing Johnny Gaudreau was hilarious. That was a great moment.
Yeah.
And obviously, not planned out.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line on all this is, when you're complaining about the All-Star game, it's not like people don't know what it is. It's not a big surprise. Nobody shows up and walked away from that and says, "Gosh, there was no hitting. I'm stuck by that. So
right.
This it is what it is. I wouldn't be like if they wanted to change it up a little bit now and then and play one outdoors or bring in the Denmark national team to play against them or the CHL All Stars. Like I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I guess why would they want to change it when it's always so successful? Like you never play to a half empty arena, and these tickets are expensive, and yet people keep going. So, it must be working.
We have to be thankful for one thing. From tonight until the end of June, there is no major breaks in the season. It's hockey. It's real hockey from now until the end of the Stanley Cup final.
Right. It gets going hard, and there's definitely an excitement. I don't know why, but even though it's only a few days off, I feel like I'm looking forward to tonight's games a little bit more than I usually am. I don't know what that is, but it really gets the sense.
I agree with you. I think everybody needs that time off, and that's why there was a discussion about the Olympics, and somebody asked really a great question of whether or not the people who don't go to the Olympic Games are now leading the charge to make sure that the people do go to the Olympics because they just want the time off.
It's a good break, yeah. And and whether that makes the playoffs better having all that time off, because in a way it does. I mean, it gives everybody a chance to get healthy. I agree with that. But I'm going tonight, and I think that they looking at the fans. They when they see their players. A couple guys reading Bill Meltzer's comments on the forums for Flyers fans, and they were saying that they were excited to see Giroux and Voracek back, back in their own space, and that it is kind of because now they've seen them in this other light. I think that is kind of cool. I get that. I do get that. It's going to be a great stretch run. I hope we have a lot of good races. There are some there's definitely a separation happening to a degree. Mm-hmm. But and so let's start with the Marty Brodeur thing a little bit, Kevin. Before we go any further. We talked a little bit about this last week when I heard about it as possibility. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, the only surprising aspect of it, obviously, is that he's going to go to the Blues instead of the Devils. But then I thought about it, and I think assistant GM position is viewed as a stepping stone position, and it's almost like an apprenticeship in some ways. And I'm sure Marty looks at this as, hey, I've gone in there. I mean, the Blues have said that he's had a tremendous impact on this team. That he's been a presence. That guys feel his positive aura, and I'm sure they want that to sort of rub off because there's been some negativity associated with the Blues in the playoffs. Last year they had the injury run and they couldn't get it together, and there's some doubt about what they can do depending on their matchups. And Brodeur is a very positive person, so I could see why the Blues would want him in. But if you're Brodeur, you're looking about this and say, hey, the Blues are going to go to the playoffs, and they're going to make a run at this. I can be part of something and contribute to a winning organization. Plus, I can learn. And Lou Lamoriello is you're going to have to retire at some point. And it's not unthinkable that Marty Brodeur could put in a little time, maybe just this year, maybe this year and next year. And the owner there in New Jersey who could look around and say, look, we got an experienced assistant GM who could come in and step in and maybe replace Lou Lamoriello. I mean, it's a plausible scenario. I don't know that there's anything etched in stone about it, but I would say that it makes sense. So I see it from both perspectives. At first, I thought it was a bit odd that he didn't go to the Devils because I think I heard you say beforehand it seemed like that was written in blood, and I agree with that. I think most people just assumed that would happen. But this is a nice situation for everyone. One thing I will say about this too is Marty Brodeur is a very bright, knowledgeable hockey guy, and he is prepared to move into management. Not everybody is, but I think Marty Brodeur, he's always very well respected by his teammates. He's a guy that has a lot of ideas. I know that I read that he had gone to the power play meetings in St. Louis, even though he was a goalie. He has a lot of thoughts, and he is a real analysis-oriented guy. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
It does. I couldn't agree more. And he's always one of those characters that when you talk to him after a game, you knew he saw more than his own game. He saw more than most goalies talk about. He would talk about the power play. He would talk about things like that. Which was always fascinating to me. Yes, and I think it's the perfect thing because he comes into if he comes into New Jersey right now, it's such a mess. Like even for the Devils, even if the Devils eventually want him to be their GM, this is probably the best thing for them. To have him go to a team that's winning, to have him go to a situation that's not stressful. The Devils situation right now is a storm. It's
It's an opportunity for almost a clean slate in a sense, because
Yeah.
you look at the Devils right now and they have 12 unrestricted free agents. They have a lot
Right.
of players like Ilyash and a few others who are probably going to retire. Yager, who will probably move on to another place. If he doesn't want to retire. It's an opportunity for somebody who, I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that Marty Brodeur is going to take over for Lou Lamoriello next year, but if he wants to go in as a sort of a 1 or 2 year apprenticeship before taking over for Lamoriello, it's an opportunity to really set up that franchise to go forward, because they have so much of it, so much room and so much of a changeover that he can sort of mold it in his image.
Yeah, and Eck, I think you made a great point there too, one I hadn't thought about. But if he goes and works for Lou Lamoriello right now, all he does is learn more of what Lou Lamoriello does, and he knows what Lou Lamoriello does.
Exactly.
By going outside, if he does come back to the Devils at some point, he's going to bring back new ideas. Things. The Blues do things differently than the Devils, and this could really be helpful. I mean, maybe he's thinking of that too, that I can learn a whole different way of doing things because everybody's philosophy is different. So, and Doug Armstrong, he's a pretty respected guy around the league, so you can learn a lot from him. I would add as well.
And I'm sure, I mean, and he said that, I've heard that he came back and talked to Lou, and I'm sure Lou probably told him the exact same thing. Lou probably said, that's a great situation, and this is the one thing about Lou Lamoriello that people, I'll always remember the story of him telling Niedermayer to go play for the Ducks. That that's the way he is, and that's one of the reasons he has so much respect among his players, is they know that he's an honest guy and he's going to tell them what he thinks is best for them at all times. And he probably said, yeah, go on a cup run, go through the whole situation, deal with a totally different media, a totally different group of people that you haven't, because he comes into New Jersey, he's dealing with the same people he's dealt with for his entire career. Out there, he gets a chance to do it completely differently, and then eventually, I don't think there's any question that he comes back to New Jersey at some point.
And a totally different scenario in the sense that if he went to New Jersey, essentially for the rest of this year, based on where that franchise is, he's just going to be part of them selling off pieces. Because they have a lot of UFAs, like I said.
Yeah.
Whereas the Blues, I mean, they're in contention for the Stanley Cup. He can watch Doug Armstrong try to add those couple pieces that are missing from the Blues and see how he does it, and it'll be a learning process for him. So yeah, I think it's a better move for Brodeur as a learning process to possibly become a future GM in a couple years.
I'm sure that Lou said that to him. I would bet it. This funny thing said to me, I just want to show you guys. The Seattle, have you heard about the Seattle Sea Mammoths? There's a proposal out there to call the Seattle hockey team the Sea Mammoths. Okay, Mammoths. Because, the mammoth was a big prehistoric animal that was very, very common to it's the Washington State prehistoric animal, apparently. I didn't know people states had prehistoric animals, but Washington State does, at least. The official fossil of Washington is the Columbian mammoth.
I thought that was Pete Carroll. I thought he was the official
Yes. Mammoths were giant prehistoric mammals that have been extinct for about 4,000 years, and anyone who's watched Ice Age with their children know what mammoths are. But, and mammoths are, but I didn't know, obviously I don't think there's such an animal as a sea mammoth. But this was sent to me, someone actually, an artist who has designed other things, this is pretty cool, designed the actual logo and everything for the Seattle Sea Mammoths. So here it is. Which I think is kind of cool. There's using the Seattle colors that we all know and love, I guess, from the Seattle Seahawks colors, which are also the colors of the Seattle soccer team. That's actually the colors of Seattle. And here, here's the Sea Mammoth jerseys. I like the tusked elephant, on the cover. I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, just throwing it out there.
I had heard one possible name was the Seattle Sasquatch.
Oh man, my son would go crazy for that. My son's a huge Bigfoot person.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Finding Bigfoot, the show? Have you watched it? Ever? No. Oh my gosh. Kevin, you have?
I have not. No. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, you guys are missing it. Reality TV at its finest. Oh my gosh, it's these guys who are out there, and every week they have you convinced that this is the week they are going, and you realize that you're watching this, and you know that if they actually discovered Bigfoot, this would be news, that you would have heard about this by now. But you're still sitting there and watching this taped show, and you're convinced as the show goes on that they're going to find him this time. And they're out in the woods, and they have their own calls, like their Bigfoot calls that they've, and like how do you call an animal that's never been discovered or exists? But they've got it. This is what a good female sounds like, and they've got they throw it out there.
Heck, we're talking about a society that is made up the Klingon language. So of course,
yes,
calls for Sasquatch, female or male.
This is a great show. I mean, and then every show, like in the previews, there's like a moment when there's like, what was that? And then you say, okay, then you wait for that.
So they've been watching too much of the Blair Witch Project.
You guys are missing it, really, really missing it. Anyway, let's move on. A couple injuries, Mike. That could really affect things here.
Yeah, a couple?
Yeah, why don't you fill everybody in?
Well, Eric Johnson, defenseman from Colorado, is out 3 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. Now it's debatable whether they're still in the playoff race. They have, I believe, 50 points. The Islanders lost Kyle Oposo for 6 to 8 weeks with an upper body injury. The one that in my neck of the woods has been fairly important has been Dion Phaneuf. He is out, quote, week to week with a hand injury. Apparently he was injured and re-injured in a couple fights that he had just before the All-Star break. So these are significant injuries. I mean, with Colorado, I mean, Johnson was selected for the All-Star game. They've been clearly their best defenseman. I think it pretty much ends there. Any possibility of them making the playoffs. Maybe this puts them in a footing where they decide if they're going to trade guys like Ryan O'Reilly, they'll be more open to doing that now. With Oposo, he's going to be out until late March or early April, just before the playoffs. It's wondering whether it'll affect Garth Snow going out and getting another forward. Toronto, I mean, they're getting most of their other injured players back, but Phaneuf plays 23 minutes a night. Stefan Robidas is also injured. So the weakest part of their team, their defense, they have their two most experienced defensemen out for significant time. So that may contribute to the Leafs' decline.
Yeah, I mean, which one of these do you think is the most important, Kev, as far as the trade deadline goes?
Well, Okposo's injury is significant, but the fact that we all believe that they're going to make the playoffs, and I don't think it really matters where they finish as much as just being in, and then he'll be back for the playoffs. I mean, he's certainly the best player in that group, and I think I just did a column where I kind of see the Islanders as the kind of the sleeper that in terms of nobody's talking about them, but yet when you call around and talk to general managers, they all say the same thing. Boy, that Islanders team is kind of a fascinating bunch. They can score, they can skate, they're a little bit harder to play against, to lock and steal a game. Suddenly there's a lot to like about the Islanders. So I guess I would say I would lean toward Okposo being the most significant because, when he comes back, he's going to have some rust, and they would like to, have their, full contingent when they go into the postseason. But, he could have probably 2.5 weeks maybe before the playoffs, maybe 3 weeks, depending if he comes back. So but I think Mike's analysis is right on. I mean, it almost feels like both the races in both the East and the West are sorting themselves out. Like, I think in the East here, I'm starting to believe that's what you see is what you get there.
Yeah.
I'm losing faith in the Panthers' ability to climb into that.
There's still 4 games in hand, the Panthers. That's the one
thing.
Yeah,
no, I agree. I mean, I would like to see them, but you say they got 4 games in hand, but if they would just win 2 of those, they're going to have to go on a run. If they go on a run, I guess anything is possible. But Colorado, I mean, that's a devastating injury. But I was starting to believe, even with the run they're making, they're not going to get in either. I mean, the biggest thing in the West is Winnipeg is just simply not faded.
Yeah,
they're playing, good hockey. And I think we've just got to assume they're going to do that the rest of the season. So.
Yeah, and in the East, the gap is, I mean, 7 points with Florida, 10 points with Toronto. And the two wildcard teams are Boston and Washington. It's not like these are teams that people expect to crumble. I mean, if
Yeah.
anything,
Right.
I think Boston and Washington are probably going to, if they can, add players at the deadline. And I just think that it's a bridge too far for teams like Ottawa and Toronto and Florida to climb back into the race in the East. And with again, the whole McDavid Eichel thing with the draft coming up, I think these teams are more apt to position themselves to finish low than to try to make a low percentage run at a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I'll throw this out there though. It really is depressing that this is set up like this. Like I really honestly, this is one time when again I'm going to make the case for 3 points for a regulation win because we just need a way for teams to be able to get back into this thing. That it bothers me that the season's like this. That teams are already playing for ties. They're trying to get 3-point games, and they were already playing for it in November. I don't know when.
Well, but one of the arguments against the 3-point system is that the races are over a lot earlier because
maybe in some of the teams, but what's the? I mean, how much earlier can it be over? Yeah, I mean, it's over now.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't normally happen like this. I mean, this is sort of an aberration in the sense we've done this.
Yeah, no, but I think that what has happened is it has gotten harder every year to come back because teams are playing more and more for the tie, and there are more and more 3-point games with a point for the overtime loss. So I think that even though this is maybe what we're seeing here is the sign of things to come because it just feels like the teams can manage to get that point and then move on and get the point, and when they lose games they get the point. And that to me is crazy too. I hate the whole getting anything for losing concept.
Yeah, well, I like the 3-point system, so I'm with you on that. I just don't think this is the argument because the argument they make for keeping the system the way it is that it keeps everybody in the race.
I think that when you really think about it, I think what happens, the only risk you have with 3 points for a regulation win is that the top teams run away with it even more so.
Yeah.
But that's happening anyway. I mean, there's no way that Tampa's fallen out of the playoffs right now, or that Pittsburgh's fallen out of the playoffs right now. So I mean, I think at the middle of the road teams, I think that's where this could change. I mean, that's where 3 points for a regulation win could actually help.
Well, I want to do it because it just makes perfect sense, but I'm not so sure that's why. Because I think, I do think that the way it is now, it's almost creates sort of this artificial competitiveness.
It does.
It seems like you're closer than you really are.
Kevin.
But that's starting. But that appearance is no longer real because that it feels like it's closer than you really are is no longer true because everybody says now that you're 7 points out, you're done. I say that. So everybody's saying that. It's not just you. I mean, everybody is. I mean, that's the common knowledge now. The ruse is up. We can no longer really make it. In my opinion, that's everyone knows that you can't make.
Well, it's not. Sometimes it's not the points. It's just the number of teams.
Right, and that's the big thing, and I think everyone's onto that, right? So the fact that exists now, the way it does, is sort of made the whole thing moot because we know that that's the case. We just saw Columbus go on a crazy run and not pick up much at all. We've seen that happen. And that occurs all the time.
Kevin, I mean, right now you've got 3 teams within 4 points for the final wild card spot in the West, but in the East, like I said, there's that big gap. I mean, do you think that since 8 teams are likely out of it in the East, that the selling from those teams happens earlier because of the teams wanting to position themselves, and do you think that it's a buyer's market because there are so many sellers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just judging on what we've seen thus far, I don't think there are going to be too many bargains. I think you're going to have to pay, and there are so many teams looking too. You look at some of the teams. Early shoppers that are traditionally early shoppers. Jim Rutherford's one of them. They shop early.
Yeah.
Brian Burke shops early. he has previously.
Yeah.
So I think that'll remain the same. But for the most part, GMs want to wait so that they can do more because of cap space.
Right.
So.
And so they can tell where they are. I mean, and they want to wait till they're, because the second you start selling off, if you're selling off, if you sell off now, you're killing your team. I mean, they got to still sell tickets, so you got to still put up this ruse that we're in it for now. But that ruse, to me, people aren't buying it anymore. Maybe I'm just being pessimistic today, but I just think that that's the case. I just think that people aren't buying it right now.
I think the tickets are already sold, Doc. I mean, in a case like Toronto or in a case like Buffalo, I don't think the individual walk up for individual games is. I mean, in Toronto there are no individual tickets. In Buffalo,
I have a funny story about this, okay? Because today, I used to have Flyer season tickets for a long time, and my wife and I had them when we were first married, and so I'm still on their list of their list to get calls. Like their sales guys will call me up, and no one and the team has apparently ever associated the fact that I do what I do. They just call me up. They're like, "Oh, how you doing? Do you still follow the team? Are you still involved in the do you still go to any of the games?" I'm like, "Yeah, I go down to some of the games," and I've never let on. So I got that call today. Literally, are you still following the team? That was the question I was asking. I'm like, well, yeah. I said, they've only played 40-some games, right? They're still going, right? Like, yeah, of course, yeah, great, awesome. Well, we got some good deals coming down the stretch, and I'm like, okay, well, all right, yeah, maybe, for Valentine's Day, you should bring your wife down, and like, yeah, sure, maybe, but it's these teams are stuck. I mean, they're trying to build, they're trying to sell. There are definitely tickets that are sold, but the key to making money in this business is to sell out the final tickets that they need to be sold, and that's what's happening now. Like selling out the rest of the house is where they make their money. So
yeah, and I understand that, and like I think I told this before. I went to go see a game in Arizona when the Leafs played the Coyotes last January, and I bought the ticket, through the Coyotes website, and I have received since then about 7 calls from the Coyotes asking if I was interested in buying more tickets and interested if I was buying season tickets. And I was very nice to them. And like, well, it would be a tough commute from Buffalo.
Yeah.
So I appreciate their stick-to-itiveness and their.
Talk about building the stadium in an inconvenient place for you, Mike. They really.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Putting it 2,500 miles away, that's not a smart thing at all. But
you know what's interesting, and I don't know that I ever even thought about this before, but it did surprise me when I heard this. And I first heard it in conjunction with the NFL, and then I asked somebody about it in the NHL, and I guess it's true there too. There are people who buy season tickets for the regular season, but then don't get their playoff.
That always baffles me. Yeah, I know.
Well, it's the cost. I mean,
yeah,
they're quite expensive. I mean, but if you're buying several rounds, and I asked somebody about it, and they say, the problem is that the time we're collecting, sometimes they just don't have the money. Some people actually, scrape together their money to get these tickets, and
oh yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, it is a lot of money, but right. Usually if you can at least come up with it, you can make money back. A lot of people, sell their playoff. I know people who sell their playoff tickets just to make it just have regular season tickets in other situations as well. So, Mike sells his season tickets to be able to. See, to me, like we when we were kids, we would sell the regular season as much as we could to be able to afford the playoffs. That's what we would do in my family, because that was, the playoffs are why we had the tickets. We had to have playoff tickets. So in order to get the playoff tickets, you had to get the regular season tickets. So that's why you got them. But yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, it has gotten ridiculously expensive to go. There's no question about that. So. Yeah, it always surprises me. Now, there's some people who are now. I want to talk a little about Ronaldo for a second. The 8-game suspension. I don't know, a little lenient on my part, but I mean, I could sort of. I guess it's probably right. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I had it 8 to 10. So,
yeah.
But I had this conversation with Brendan Shanahan, and it really just brings home how difficult he is. I mean, he and I talked about, remember when Weber got fined in that big, the Red Wings in Nashville, and he said, Kevin, how did you have that? And I said, I had a game suspension. He goes, well, so it was either a fine or a suspension. It's not like you were at 7 games and I was at 9. And he said that's the issue, is that these things are close and it's complicated and all that. So, and this kind of thing, what did you have it as, 12 or?
I had it as 12 to 15 actually.
Yeah, well.
I think I had it at 10. I think I said double digits. Which...
Yeah, I said 8 to 10, and
I mean,
I think I think it's a little light, but it's in the ballpark.
No, I've been inundated, maybe because I covered the Flyers on such a regular basis and everything like that. But I've been inundated with people who tell me that this is because Chris Pronger is a part of this. That this is that. I don't buy that for a second, but I'm just saying this is you knew this was going to happen. The perception was going to get out there.
I think it's more mitigated, Eck, by the fact that Letang is probably coming back tonight. I mean, that he's not seriously injured. I mean, yes. and see that's the thing that I can't stand is that the result of the hit is factored into the penalty. It should not be factored into the penalty. It should be the offense itself. And Ronaldo, I think, jumped when he hit Letang into the boards. And he's got and he has a reputation, and so it should have been factored. That should have been factored in, but not the fact that Letang is coming back and that being a factor in lessening the penalty.
Let me throw this out there for that, because I felt exactly as you did, Mike. Like, to me, attempted murder is still a crime.
Right.
But I've talked about about this with some of my lawyer friends, because I've said, you shouldn't factor that in. And then he goes, in the criminal system, they do it all the time. Like, if you go and slug a guy on the street and, he gets right up and walks away, your crime won't be nearly, or your penalty will not be nearly as severe as if you break his jaw and, he loses 40 pounds. That's the way the judicial system works. So, when I heard that, I thought, okay, I guess I do get that, but I'm with you. When I see that, I think, attempted murder is still attempted murder, and if you're trying to hurt somebody, you need to pay a price, even if you don't do it this severely. But there is my only point is there is a precedent, in almost all adjudication that the result plays a role.
It has. I mean, we do live in an eye for an eye society still. I think that's the bottom line, right? So that to me is the is part of the line. I wanted to talk to Kevin really briefly about Crosby missing the All-Star game. We didn't get a chance to talk to you about this at all, too.
Yeah.
And I was really upset by this. Honestly, I wrote an article I was just disappointed in it in general, because him not even going to the All-Star game, because knowing what the NHL has to deal with and how the NHL. I mean, he missed an All-Star game before, I remember seeing him there, and I talked to him about it, and he said that he was there because the NHL had set up a bunch of things for him to do, like with sponsors and things like that, people he had to meet with. What were your feelings on how this went down?
Well, he really is hurt, and we know that because they were willing to take the penalty in order to do that. So I think they felt that the injury that he has, and everybody's hurt. That's the problem we have. Like, when you start saying that injury is acceptable, but everybody's hurt. That's the problem. They have some form, but apparently he is hurt, and they felt like the time was, and I know Crosby pretty well, and I don't think he's not the type of guy that would pull out just to pull out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. These are tough calls because this is why we love Ovechkin, is he shows up every year and he never complains about it.
Right, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it really in retrospect. I mean, because he does that, and and he doesn't even, and he's okay even playing a minor or like a smaller role at times too, which is also and then you could argue that he kind of was playing a major role while playing a minor role, but there's certain things Ovechkin is Ovechkin, that I don't know.
He had one of the best lines of the game. I don't know if you saw what happened, but Elias said after the game that he lost the puck, and he started to back check against Ovechkin, and Ovechkin yelled at him, "Hey, what are you doing? I got a breakaway."
That's great. That's really great.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to criticize Sid, but because obviously the intent is to try to get all the stars there, and they were missing some. You should move mountains, but part of the problem is that Crosby does more than his fair share when it comes to selling the game. So
No, he does. He does.
yeah, so that's why I give him the not just the benefit of the doubt, but I believe him. I think Sidney Crosby's hurt, and I think the evidence of that is they, without hesitation, said we're keeping him out of the game, and we're happily will pay the price because we think that he's out anyway. This will help heal him. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, you lived through the whole Nick Lidstrom thing and all that went down, and
yeah.
It's a tough one, and then this year Lundqvist basically telling, don't invite me. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was going on that just didn't rub me the right way. But Mike Richards now. Let's talk. Mike Richards has cleared waivers.
Yeah.
I guess that wasn't surprising, although I still, am of the belief that people made a mistake here. I'm just on the other side of this thing with everybody. I still think that Richards comes to the table, and I think he's worth his contract. And I know that many people can't do it, but there are some teams like the Islanders, who could have done it, and I think should have done it.
Well, I had a long discussion about this with a couple of general managers and a pro scout, all of who have seen a lot of them, and they said that you would just not even consider taking that contract for where he's at now. And I said that, but don't you think he still has value? Because I do. And all of them agreed he does have value, but all three of them agreed, and not knowing what the others had said, that at best he's a third-line center. And, it's just way too much money for a third-line center. I think he's going to go to the minors, and then I think as we get closer, there'll be some discussions about, if the Kings keep some of his money. But both the GMs said to me, there's probably not a deal that could be made that they would take him, unless you could get it down to, a $2 million player, or
right, for that long. Yeah. I mean, I think a four. I don't know. I think that
it's the max 50% that they can.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I mean, it would be 2.8.
2 point. Yeah.
Now the thing is, Kevin, and I think that there would be takers at that amount because and the Kings might have to throw in something. Apparently, there was talk between them and Toronto it was surrounding Phaneuf. And Toronto in the deal wanted a Toffoli or a Pearson as part of the deal to take Richards back because they think Richards is a diminishing return and Phaneuf is still in his prime. And I don't know if this is Elliot Friedman who's reporting this, and to me that makes sense, and that's probably what a lot of teams are looking for if they think Richards is a diminishing return. That's what they would want is something thrown on top of it. Now, if they pay half the money, I think it's beneficial for the Kings because if they buy him out at the end of this year, the buyout spreads over 10 years, and the cap hit is around a little under $2 million a year throughout it may fluctuate up and down, but it's going to be around that for the balance. If they pay $2.5 million on the current deal, it's only going to last 5 years. I mean, they will be able to clear almost $3 million in cap space by trading them and maybe having to throw an asset in there. But at least they clear that room and they can use that to sign Toffoli and sign Pearson, who are on their at the end of their entry level deal and starting their bridge deal. So it clears that space. I mean, I think that's the way they have to go, and they could get an Islanders or a Winnipeg or a Calgary to then be interested in that. But they just can't take money back in this deal. They in terms of a contract, they're not going to take David Clarkson back from Toronto
it just takes them sideways, and that I think everything they got offered up was going to take them sideways. That's what I was told, and it really made no sense to them. So it wasn't a defenseman, it wasn't like they got a defenseman that was taking them sideways, which would help them a little bit more, but it was always forward for forward type thing. So that was a problem. But yeah, only time will tell, But I think he could have been more valuable to another team, and I know the contract is what it is, and I think that over time, the contract will. I always thought it was kind of a good contract. I know I don't agree that he's only a third line center, but that's just my opinion. I think he could be a second line center in the right situation.
He's just
And,
falling off the cliff right now, Ak. I mean,
yes, but it's I really do think it's situational, and I think that I do think that we have no way of knowing that, but I just because there's no means for comparison, But I think that I think it's situational. Maybe.
I'm fairly confident in saying that if he was bought up by LA at the end of this year and he was on the market, that there would be at least double figures in teams lined up to sign him for a 1 or 2 year deal.
Like who's more valuable in the open market?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, like who's more valuable? He's more valuable than Brad Richards, for example. Like Mike Richards is more valuable in the open market than Brad Richards as a free agent. Correct?
But I mean, but there's the perfect model there, Ak. 1 year deal,
right? Bought out.
$2 million.
I know he's got to get bought out for that to happen. I agree. No, I agree and I think buying him out is probably the only way he's gonna make it back to the NHL. So I think that's where the Kings will eventually go with it. They'll have to.
And the only scary thing about the trade and retention of salary is the cap recapture, which I've learned now. It's not. It pertains to the Luongos and those long-term deals that were signed before the CBA. It wasn't grandfathered in. So if he retires within 5 years, the Kings are going to get smacked with the cap retention penalty. So I mean that's got to be a factor, which to me leads me more to them buying him out at the end of this year and just taking the cap hit over 10 years, and Dean Lombardi regretting the fact that he didn't use the compliance buyout on him last year.
Yeah, perhaps, definitely, I would say that too. Well, that's all the time we have for today, guys. But thank you so much, Kevin.
Yep, absolutely. Glad to be back in the saddle.
Nice to have you back for sure, and we'll be back again tomorrow. And might get Matt Barry in to talk about Richards a little bit tomorrow. Perhaps he was going to join us today, but he has a case of the flu, so he was out today. But we'll talk soon, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you then.